Good morning, everybody. We got some really big news, but before we get into it, let's talk about BitChute. Everything's being uploaded there. It's working great. I definitely recommend you get over there and subscribe, because eventually YouTube's going to kick us off. They just instituted a new policy change where, it's looking ugly. So, don't forget to go to BitChute. I'll post on True Media Portland 2.0 for as long as possible. The original True Media is basically gone. I'm banned for 14 days. One more strike, they're going to pull the channel for good. So get used to BitChute, because that's where I'm going to be. Now, what are we going to talk about today? We've all heard about the Chinese troops in Canada, right? You guys have heard of that, I'm sure. In fact, we might be able to even find a video of it. And people have been talking about this for a few months, right? There was also a story about a trucker delivering a freelance load in Mexico to a motor pool with like 10,000 Chinese vehicles or something. And nobody knew if this was true or not. And I can't speak about the Mexican thing, but we do now have proof that Chinese troops are being trained in Canada by the Canadian military. I'm not even kidding, guys. This is coming from Ezra at Rebel News. I trust Rebel News. They're one of the only legitimate mainstream news sources in the world, I think. And basically, he requested, kind of like a Freedom of Information Act, but the Canadian version. He requested one document, and it seems like whoever he was talking to might really hate the Canadian government. Basically, he was given 34 pages. It's like an itinerary of events from 2019. And as you can see here, it appears like either they intentionally used gray instead of black on the redactions, or the person wanted this information to get out there. And Ezra Cohen's leaning towards that latter option. It seems like somebody in the intelligence agency of Canada wanted that information to get out. I haven't looked at any of this yet. I have it on my hard drive. It is downloaded. So let's just go through it together. Embassy of Canada in China calendar, April 12th, 2019, for official use only. And you can see, check this out. April 14th to 16th, 2019. You can see we have China International Peas and Flaxseed Conference, pretty normal stuff. April 29th to May 2nd, Canadian Animation Delegation to visit China International Cartoon and Animation Festival. Okay. We come down here to June 2nd through 5th, ECCC Minister McKenna, so Canadian military, I think, in Hangzhou for ministerial dialogue on environmental and climate change in annual general meeting. Okay, nothing too bad yet. But look at all these events that Canada takes part in, right? The second Canadian Healthy Aging Mission to China. Okay, October 18th to 27th, 2019. The 7th Military World Games in Wuhan with Canadian Armed Forces participation. They sent Richard Levy over. Unbelievable, guys. The name Richard. Oh, no, not Richard. I was thinking of Robert. My bad. China Education Expo. China Fish and Seafood Expo. Okay, check this out. We have an email here. Classification secret. Canadian eyes only. Okay, a few updates on the France-Taiwan Strait transit. So it looks like these are meant to be redacted. 1. As you know, we have been awaiting additional information from France on its recent transit of the Taiwan Strait. Example, the distance France maintained from mainland China's coastline. This will be useful info given DND is planning a Taiwan Strait transit in June. 2. Our attempts to secure additional info from France via Paris channels did not succeed. Thus far, DND has not received an update from France via DA channels, and DND continues to seek an update. It's going to get better, guys, don't worry. In the meantime, okay, this one I might not be able to read. Analysis is that India conducted a Taiwan Strait transit at a similar time as France's transit, but sparking no reaction from China. Finally, on the point from the May 2nd report from Beijing below, the diplomat speculated that the U.S. may have fed the story to media to provoke a reaction from China just ahead of the BRF. This was later confirmed by Redacted. DND has taken note of this, and this will factor into the communication strategy that is developed for the proposed June 2019 Taiwan Strait. Like I said, I haven't looked at any of these guys, but according to Ezra, they talk about specifically training troops at, I think it's called Camp Patattawa in Canada. It's a military base. Once again, this one's for secret Canadian eyes only. Thanks for this. I find this a little odd, as it would seem to imply that they would draw baselines between the island and the mainland, something that would be very difficult to sustain, in my view. And even there, I do not see how redacted. I am looking forward to see anything you can learn on this, redacted, to clarify what happened. Thanks, Sydney. IGR was tracking this info, but is seeking more robust details from France. This has taken a bit of time, as Paris was directed by France to channel our questions via the DA section, rather than GR. Oh, okay, look at this, guys. Number 9, French transit of Taiwan Strait provokes strong reaction from Beijing. Let's read this. A Chinese Ministry of Defense spokesperson accused France of, quote, illegally entering Chinese waters, end quote, last week, referring to a transit of the Taiwan Strait on April 6, this would be 2019, by the French frigate Vendémiaire. While this remark was removed from official transcripts of the MFA spokesperson press conference, analysts were quick to note that the language used implies that China considers the entirety of the Taiwan Strait as Chinese waters. Moreover, characterizing such transits by foreign vessels as illegal would represent a significant shift in Chinese policy. The transit resulted in Beijing's withdrawal of an invitation to the French Navy to participate in the Qingdao commemoration of the 70th anniversary of the founding of the PLA's Navy. That's China's Navy. Wow. So, a French diplomat, Beijing GR, spoke to, but did not want to confirm this, but emphasized that there has been no change in France's position regarding freedom of navigation operations, and that the French Navy has conducted this type of transit in the past. The diplomat said there had been communications between the two sides via various channels and at different levels following the April 6 transit, but that China had not taken a strong public stance until redacted on the issue early last week. The diplomat speculated that the U.S. may have fed the story to media to provoke a reaction from China just ahead of the BRF. This was later confirmed by redacted. Analysts note that China's response reflects its increasingly vehement opposition to the involvement of outsiders in the waters off its coast, which has recently resulted in forceful responses to US and UK transits through waters claimed by China. So yeah, it seems like Canada is on the side of China, right? You would think they would be supporting France and American vessels in that area, but no, it's Canada and China are best friends. Once again, secret Canadian eyes only. Xi gives a speech about the May 4th movement. On April 30th, the premier of the CCCP, or whatever the hell the Chinese call their country, Xi Jinping, gave a speech at the Great Hall of the People, emphasizing the patriotic elements of the May 4th movement while downplaying the anti-authority student mobilization that featured so heavily 100 years ago. Xi said that, quote, Chinese youth in the new era must obey the party and follow the party, end quote, calling those who are unpatriotic, quote, a disgrace in the eyes of their own country and the whole world, end quote. Many China watchers view this as an attempt to reshape the narrative of the May 4th movement away from one centered on the overthrow of the old regime, and towards one centered on patriotism for China and linked to the party's own revolutionary past. Separately this week, Peking University installed new facial recognition scanners at campus entrances, perhaps underscoring the party's worries about control on campuses. 2. More Marxist students disappear. Oh my gosh. You ready? While still relatively unconfirmed, some Western media outlets reported that yet another group of students associated with Marxist groups have been disappeared on the margins of the Labor Day holiday. I think a week ago I saw from Andy No a very sad video of students in China being led to train cars, and somebody's filming from a balcony like 10 stories up. And the two individuals look back into the camera, and, you know, the quote written was, this is probably the last time that these two kids will ever be seen. Heartbreaking. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a Marxist or capitalist, right? Both wings of the same bird. Humans should not be treated the way they're treated in China. Okay. Before departing, he posted on social media that, quote, if doing this kind of manual labor makes me disappear, everyone knows who did it, end quote. Talking about one of the students. In December, Kui was snatched from the campus of Peking University by unidentified men, suspected to be plainclothes police officers. Beijing GR will continue to monitor the plight of these students. The Great Firewall grows taller. Let's keep scrolling a little bit. Switzerland joins the BRI. China backs down on listing Masood Azhar as a global terrorist. Here we have a diplomatic calendar, right? Wow, a lot of people got this email. Okay, I want to find something about the Chinese in Canada. It's in here somewhere. More secret Canadian eyes only. Oh, these people are sick. Let's read this one. Secret Canadian eyes only, January 29th, 2019. Hi, Nicola. Thanks again for your input to the action memo today. Using input from you as well as from D&D and Acting Director IGR, I have created a version 3 of the action memo, attached herewith. I have reworked the draft letter as well. The content attached herewith will be an IGD reading package for Wednesday 8 a.m., and I have caveated for IGD that OPB's input thus far is limited to the action memo and at DD level. I note that I have onboarded some of your comments and questions and relayed these with D&D, and once I get more info from D&D, I'll integrate this input into the finalized product. For example, whether several Five Eye countries have expressed concerns about knowledge transfer versus the US only. The Five Eyes is an intelligence agreement between the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States, right? All controlled by the Crown, pretty much. International defense. Okay, check this out. The next planned engagement between the Canadian Army, D&D, and the People's Army of China is identified in the attached April 2019. I did not touch on the D&D CAF's proposal to partake in a SCS group sale in September 2018, as the linkages are not as clear-cut, and this may steer us away from the current focus on D&D CAF collaborative bilateral engagements with the PLA. D&D CAF. CAF is Canadian Armed Forces. D&D is probably their Department of National Defense or something. So, right here where she's writing, is she doesn't want to steer us away from the current focus on the Canadian Armed Forces' collaborative bilateral engagements with the Chinese Army. This memo provides D&D a steer on its standard bilateral engagements with China in 2019, and addressing SCS operations, or linking this in, could broaden the scope of this memo. In the meantime, D&D already received a DM-level steer in September 2018 that proposes activities in SCH, such as group sales, would require GAC approval. But if you see an angle to fit this in, I welcome your suggestion. Our hopefully modest intent for today is to have a copy of this document that can be shared with IGD and OPD for consideration tomorrow. On the sidelines of the meetings, they will both attend at Meech Lake. Meech Lake is highlighted for some reason. Wow. So that's our first example of collaboration between China and Canadian Armed Forces. I think it's going to get worse, though. Hi, Antoine. We are in the process of reviewing the draft and had a couple questions. Does the Canadian Armed Forces have any upcoming bilateral events or initiatives in the near future that have been planned and may be cancelled? Our impression is that the Canadian Armed Forces' reluctance to engage with the PLA is not solely related to Miss Meng's arrest and the consular cases, that there are other reasons behind their interest in disengaging. From our perspective, it also perhaps to be related to a desire to be fully aligned with the Five Eyes, particularly the US, whose approach has shifted under the Trump administration. We recall, for example, that back in December, the Canadian Armed Forces were keen to cancel the PLA's participation in the winter survival training following the request from DoD to do so. There it is, guys, smoking gun. I think there's going to be more, but they're saying right here that the CAF, the Canadian Armed Forces, so people who are probably normal people, after Miss Meng's arrest, that might be the Huawei lady, they are expressing their desire to pull away from any coordination with the PLA. And then in this email, they're talking about trying to fix that problem. And they're saying that when we did the winter survival training, the Canadian Armed Forces weren't happy about it and didn't want to partake. Guys, that happened in Canada. And I think there's going to be proof of that down here. But the Canadian Army and the Chinese Army are involved on Canadian soil in doing winter survival training programs. From what I can tell, DND-CAF is also lukewarm about engaging on peacekeeping and the potential security implications despite it being a leaders level commitment. There was an ATIP of DND documents prepared for a meeting with Ambassador or McCallum that indicated their reluctance. If you agree, we would suggest this be included in the memo. If you can take a first stab at drafting some appropriate language, that would be very helpful. Unbelievable. Once again, secret Canadian eyes only. Nicola, as promised, a first cut at the frame of the draft action memo and letter for USS and to DM Thomas, sharing now to confirm if the structure looks good to you. And in the letter, I've identified 2 sections in particular where I think OPB would lead in content. Okay, let's keep looking. This is disgusting, you guys. Okay, this one's unclassified. Look at the attachment. Canadian Armed Forces and People's Liberation Army Engagements 2019 triaged. The attached document, I hope it's here, is literally about joint operations between Canadian and Chinese soldiers. Uros. I'm reviewing the attached document. It is accurate that the only upcoming engagement with China is the fleet review in Qingdao. Greater China colleagues and Leah, as directed by Major General Derek Joyce, DG International Security Policy at DND, please find attached the requested list of anticipated national defense engagements with China in 2019. Oh my gosh. Ugh. Let's get some attachments, huh? Okay, the subject of this email, China, request for info plus key messages, new coordination inbox. Colleagues, thanks to everyone who attended yesterday's Director General's Committee on China meeting. First, I've attached a message my colleague Melanie sent last night, requesting information on upcoming engagement from your departments with China. The Deputy Minister's Committee on China has requested a list of all upcoming activities to ensure coordination of messaging and approach on China in the short term. If you have upcoming travel or incoming visits or ministerial correspondence, we would be grateful if you could let us know. We'll share an initial list with deputies tomorrow, but this list will be kept evergreen, so do feel free to share additional information as and when things arise. Friday, December 21st is when they're talking about this, so literally when Wu Flu was starting. And look at this, guys, but this list will be kept evergreen. Evergreen. Why is that important? Well, I'm pretty sure Hillary Clinton's Secret Service name is Evergreen. Hold on. Let me search Evergreen. Eagle, Chelsea Clinton. Yep, look at Senator Hillary Clinton, code name Evergreen. Oh my gosh. But this list will be kept evergreen. Interesting. And I believe the Clintons are also tied up with a international shipping company called Evergreen Shipping. And there is certainly a connection between Hillary Clinton, the Clintons, the Deep State, and this company. I haven't looked into it yet, but yeah, I'm quite sure. Wow. Let's continue with this document. Let me get an attachment here. What is this? Year of Tourism. Okay. Here we go. Classification secret. Thanks again, Euros, and we'll follow up with more on points 3 and 4. Cheers from Antoine. Okay, subject response to your question. Classification secret, Canadian eyes only. Antoine, 1. The fleet review was not agreed upon at the DCD. We reached out to Five Eyes partners in the fall to benchmark their levels of participation before crafting a response. As you know, the challenges in Canada-China relations intensified in December, as our consultations with Five Eyes were ongoing, and we have been holding this response since then. It would now fall under the DG and above category of the GAC guidance, as a Commander RCN is an admin-level equivalent. Note also, as of early January 2019, our understanding is that the Five Eyes countries have not yet determined their levels of participation, but that they will likely not be represented by their commanders of Navy. The Five Eyes countries' participation in what? Canada. 2. This is at GAC's discretion, but we will need to consider the topic within the next several weeks, as we could invite one PLA instructor and one student to the Spring Peacekeeping Course serial in May, and one of each to the Fall serial. Those invitations would need to go out by the end of February 2019. Inviting Chinese military? Which sit reps are you referring to? What is the intended audience and level with the whole of government community? 4. The DM China Committee is typically attended by Gordon Venner, Associate Deputy Minister of National Defense. The DG China Committee is typically attended by Major General Derek Joyce, Director General International Security Policy, and or Philippe Lafortune, Deputy DG. Depending on the topic, other meetings are also attended by D&D and CAF teams. Alright, response. Classification secret. Hi Euros. A few updates, additional questions as the China guidance works its way up to our DM for approval. On the fleet review, was there any particular reason why D&D did not respond the September 2018 invitation? Looks like it's redacted below. 2. Guidance on China provided by IFM and ADM emphasizes peacekeeping. This includes peacekeeping related, redacted, such a level of detail focus. On peacekeeping, level guidance still warranted or is covered by the banner of the guidance that states, quote, "It is essential that GAC be consulted via IGR before any of the CAF activities are canceled or postponed." 3. Who within D&D should receive the daily China sit reps prepared by GAC? 4. Who from D&D attends interdepartmental meetings on China? Another one here. Also, I think you are correct that the DG level China committee meeting was in December. Will advise if I hear otherwise. Here's another one. Secret Canadian eyes only. Antoine, I will respond to your questions in numbered format. 1. Oh, here we go, guys. The winter survival training will not take place this winter, 2019. Future options have not been considered. The direction from General Joyce was that when we go back to China regarding engagement, we tailor a message consulted with GAC stating that we are not in a position to conduct the training at this time, or a similar message to this effect. We are happy to work with GAC to tailor the appropriate messaging. 2. The security concerns originated primarily from the US, as I pointed out in the email trail below. They may have originally been raised on the margins of a Five Eyes meeting last fall. We do not have a record of other Five Eyes countries expressing these concerns to Canada. 3. Correct on all points. 4. We received the invitation in mid-September. 5. I was referencing the December 2018 China Committee, at which time both Sydney and Sarah acknowledged the status of the winter survival training and the approach highlighted above regarding eventually going back to the PLA, i.e. a carefully consulted message tailored in cooperation with GAC. I was not tracking a DG China meeting in January, but this may be because I was on leave until the 8th. When did this meeting occur? Okay. Hi Euros, a few follow-up questions to keep this process moving. On cancellation of winter training, is the training really a paused if it doesn't happen, or is it canceled? We'd like to have our facts straight. On security concerns expressed by the Five Eye partners about Canadian engagements with the Chinese Army, specifically the example of winter survival training, but could apply to other instances, and there are additional countries that the US that have expressed concerns. I seem to recall Australia may have voiced concerns about the winter training, but this seems to have dropped. Unless there are other countries voicing concerns to the CAF, it would seem concerns are from the US rather than the Five Eyes. So they're saying the US is the only country in this group of 5 that is saying stop doing military training with China on Canadian soil. Unbelievable. In the action memo to our deputy, it is stated that the Canadian Armed Forces and the People's Liberation Army of China initiatives planned for 2019 are modest and non-sensitive, and most were agreed at the annual bilateral defense coordination dialogue. To confirm, the DCD took place in April 2018 at the 2-star general office level, correct? Wow. On the fleet review in Qingdao, when did China make this invitation to the RCN CAF? Literally an invitation to the Canadian Armed Forces. When referencing the last Government of Canada DG China Committee, can you confirm that this was in January rather than December? Antoine, in response, the decision to pause the winter survival training was communicated to GAC at the DG level on the margins of the last Government of Canada DG China Committee. What is the last Government of Canada Committee? Uh-oh. General Joyce informed Sydney and Sarah Taylor that the CDS has decided to, this is redacted, I think I can read it, to pause training something, oh my gosh. I can't read it. General Joyce, Sydney, and Sarah agreed that GAC would be consulted before this was communicated to China in order to shape messaging. The decision has not been communicated to China yet due to the ongoing sensitivities in bilateral relations. Wow, guys. Hi, Euros. Thanks for the below. Very helpful. One other question to ensure that we have our facts ducks lined up. Was the decision to pause winter training communicated to China yet? Is it safe to say the CDS's decision to pause winter training was in response to concerns expressed by the Five Eyes about knowledge transfer risks, rather than in response to the recent China-Canada spike in tensions? Chinese troops on Canadian soil is not a myth. Antoine, my original response keeps bouncing back, so I'm starting a separate email trail that will hopefully go through. Here is my response to your email. Yes, that is correct, but we have not returned to the Chinese army with a response to this invitation. I also note that under the recent GAC guidance on engagement with China, this would fall under the DG level and above category, thus requiring consultation with GAC. The invitation was to the commander, RCN, which is a admin level equivalent. Currently, the commander, RCN, is not planning to attend, but there may be some flexibility if GAC views this as a priority. More broadly, and as I have mentioned over the phone, given that discussions on China engagement within DND have been occurring at the DM level, we would be grateful for DM level guidance from the GAC. This would allow us to move forward on the remainder of the engagement plan, minus the winter survival training, which was paused. So there you go, they have an engagement plan with the Chinese army on Canadian soil, but they're talking about putting a pause on the winter survival training. Sick. Okay. Global Affairs Canada, secret, memorandum for action. 2. The Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs CC'd the IFM in the OGM. Subject, Deputy Minister level guidance from GAC with respect to DND, Canadian Army engagements with China's Army. Look at that subject, guys. Remember, CAF is Canadian Armed Forces, PLA is the People's Liberation Army of China, something like that. Summary. On December 21, the Department of National Defense requested Deputy Minister-level guidance with respect to Department of National Defense Canadian Armed Forces bilateral engagements with China. DND-CAF is reviewing its posture and commitments to its engagement with the People's Liberation Army. Look at that, guys. In part due to China's response to the U.S. extradition request of Mrs. Meng Wanzhou. I think that's the Huawei lady. And the resulting Canadian consular cases. Thus far, the CAF Chief of Defense Staff has unilaterally elected not to proceed with one bilateral military activity training exercise planned for 2019, a winter survival training exercise. China and the PLA has not yet been informed of this decision. While resolving the consular cases is the Government of Canada's top priority, ensuring a certain amount of continuity in other parts of the Canada-China relationship remains important. Given the heightened scrutiny, any decision by Canada to reduce or cut ties should be carefully considered to avoid sending any unhelpful or unintended messages. DND has been included in ongoing DG and ADM interdepartmental discussions about the current situation and is aware of the Government of Canada's approach, but is seeking higher-level, DM-level guidance from Global Affairs Canada, GAC, to provide to the Canadian Armed Forces absent this guidance. The CAF's Chief of Defense Staff may undertake further unilateral decisions concerning the CAF's relationship with the Chinese Army. In the interest of avoiding such a scenario, a letter has been drafted on your behalf for DND's Deputy Minister Thomas that will provide DND Canadian Army guidance consistent with Canada's current approach to China. Recommendations: that you sign the attached letter to the Deputy Minister Thomas, providing CAF guidance on engagements with China. Unbelievable, guys. Background. The Canadian Army is reviewing its posture and commitment to its engagement with the Chinese Army, partly in fight of China's response to the U.S. extradition of Mrs. Meng Wanzhou and the resulting Canadian consular cases. So basically, they're putting a pause on their Chinese troop training on Canadian soil, winter survival training, because, if you recall, the U.S. called for the extradition of Wang Zhu, who I think is the CEO of Huawei, or was, regarding 5G surveillance state stuff. Okay, 2. The review is also driven by concerns expressed by the U.S. military that at least one element of the Canada-China agreement collaboration planned for 2019 risks unintended and undesired knowledge transfer from Canada to the Chinese. In close alignment with Canada's Five Eyes partners, D&D continues to ensure that bilateral defense engagements with China are balanced with security concerns and do not provide the Chinese army with any operational capability enhancements, including in areas such as humanitarian assistance and disaster response. Unbelievable. China remains reliant on the acquisition of foreign military technologies and weapon systems to advance key aspects of its military modernization, including through cyber espionage and the unintended transfer of military and military-civilian dual-use technologies. What do you think they're doing in Canada? The Canadians are literally just giving everything to the Chinese. They're helping China become a first-world superpower, right? Because all China needs now, they've got the people, they've got the energy, they've got the government for it. All they need is the technology, right? All they need is the 21st century technology to complete the world's most dangerous army, being trained by Canada. Look at this, number 3. Canadian Armed Forces and the People's Liberation Army of China initiatives planned for 2019 are modest and non-sensitive, and most were agreed to at the annual bilateral defense coordination dialogue, which occurred in April 2018 at the 2-star flag officer level. Agreeing to the CAF-PLA initiatives at the annual dialogues has enabled both sides to plan appropriately and has made situations relatively rare in which activities are declined. Look at that line. So they don't even decline working with each other. They're doing this. This isn't just winter survival training, people. This is all the time. I mean, remember those videos? Those were not from the winter. Those are from the summer, and they were of platoons of Chinese troops in uniform jogging down Canadian streets. Number 4. Among the various D&D CAF activities planned with the PLA in 2019, thus far the CAF CDS has directed to not proceed with one, winter survival training with the PLA. While this decision was taken following Mrs. Meng's provisional arrest, we understand that it was driven principally by concerns voiced by the U.S. that the training could result in unintended and undesired knowledge transfer to the PLA. As a result, the D&D CAF has not invited the PLA to participate in the winter survival training this year as planned, but has not yet informed the PLA of the actual decision. At a December 2018 Government of Canada DG China Committee meeting, D&D agreed that GAC would be consulted before the decision is communicated to China in order to shape messaging in advance and account for ongoing sensitivities in bilateral relations. 5. The next proposed engagement is for the Commander Royal Canadian Navy or an RCN delegate to attend the PLA Navy Fleet Review in Qingdao in April 2019. Sending the Royal Canadian Navy to China to attend the PLA Navy Fleet Review in Qingdao, April 2019. What a joke. In response to a September 2018 invitation by the Chinese Army, the Canadian Armed Forces has not provided the PLA a response to this invitation, and your letter to DM Thomas will emphasize the importance of consulting with GAC beforehand. 6. Given that any unilateral changes by D&D CAF its planned engagements with the PLA may have implications for Canada's bilateral relations with China and or Canada's regional defense and security interest, GAC provided Director General level guidance to the interdepartmental community, including D&D, on January 17th. This guidance stressed the need to maintain an ongoing relationship with China and avoid initiating changes to planned bilateral engagements without consultation. So the GAC, who I believe is above all these people emailing, says they're stressing that the relationship doesn't change with China. They want to keep it exactly how it is, right? So it sounds like China might be the man in this relationship. On January 21, D&D requested that GAC provide DM level guidance on D&D CAF engagement with China. 8. IFM sent a holding message to his counterpart, Admiral Pete Hammerschmidt, on January 25, stating that until such guidance is relayed, there should be no change to the current approach, which was articulated by GAC at the DG level on January 17. Considerations. Number 9. In general, the Canadian Armed Forces ensures that all bilateral activities with China are non-sensitive, unclassified, evolve at a controlled and incremental pace, and do not enhance the PLA's operational capabilities. What an oxymoron. You're training the PLA. So how can your activities not enhance the PLA's operational capabilities? Give me a break. Number 10. In February 2018, GAC provided D&D foreign policy guidance titled, quote, Canada's priorities for security and defense engagement in Asia Pacific, end quote. That was thoroughly consulted with D&D. Oh my gosh, ready? The document encourages the Canadian Armed Forces to pursue bilateral cooperation with the Chinese Army, as this helps Canada to build a positive, trust-based but low-risk relationship with China on defense and security issues. In recognition of the complex and risks associated with defense and security engagement with China, the guidance outlines that engagement activities should focus on non-sensitive areas and must not undermine Canada's national security or that of our like-minded partners and allies. Such Canadian Army engagements with the Chinese Army are intended to encourage transparency and respect for global norms and to build mutual trust, particularly in the areas of HADR, which is what we're living in right now, disaster relief, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah, you really want this to be open? Look at all this redaction. The 2018 Foreign Policy Guidance requests that the Canadian Army consult GAC in advance of activities, and by extension, cessation of activities that could impact the Canadian-China bilateral relationship. 12. Unilateral decisions to postpone or cancel previously agreed Canadian Army cooperation with the Chinese Army risk being interpreted by China or others as an unintended and unhelpful way that could also damage Canada's long-term defense. Should the Canadian Army decide to delay or cancel previously agreed initiatives for other reasons, this should be paired with careful communication strategies to avoid becoming inadvertently linked to the current situation. 14. United States defense engagement with China has a long history of staff exchanges and joint military exercises, particularly in the area of HADR. Wow. Is that not important, guys? The United States defense is working with the Chinese for military exercises, particularly in the area of what? Disaster relief, what we're going through right now. Even the Americans are working with them. Should Canada make significant reductions in its military engagement with China, China will likely read this as a retaliatory move related to the Ming Wanzhou case. This is not least because China has used reductions in military engagement with the U.S. in recent years to signal its dissatisfaction with the U.S.-China trade relationship. Such reductions have included reported canceled visits by senior military personnel. Resource implications, nil. Direct resource implications. Communications implications, 17. Continuation or changes to DND cooperation with the Chinese Army may intentionally or unintentionally result in media coverage. 18. Should media coverage arise, the guidance proposed in this memorandum ensures that decisions undertaken by the Canadian Army concerning engagements with the Chinese Army are consistent with Canada's overall policy approach to China and can be explained in those terms. Unbelievable, you guys. Let's read this. Almost done. Dear Deputy Minister Thomas, February 2019. At the request of your department, I am writing to provide you with guidance with respect to the Department of National Defense Canadian Armed Forces engagement with China. This guidance may assist the Canadian Army in making decisions in the context of recent events in the Canadian-China relation, including China's response to the U.S. extradition request of Mrs. Wang Zhu and the resulting Canadian consular cases. So basically the 5G case, the extradition, I guess, messed up and exposed the Canadian-Chinese relationship. That's what it sounds like. While resolving the consular cases is the Government of Canada's top priority, ensuring a certain amount of continuity in other parts of the Canada-China relationship remains important. Given the heightened scrutiny, any decision by Canada to reduce or cut ties should be carefully considered to avoid sending any unhelpful or unintended messages. In this context, the Canadian Army engagements with China should be guided by the following principles. 1. Canada does not want to be the partner that is reducing normal bilateral interactions. So Canada does not want to slow things down with China. Boom. 2. There is still a desire to maintain an ongoing relationship with China while recognizing and managing the risks. 3. In that context, it is essential that GAC be consulted before any activities are cancelled or postponed, particularly initiatives previously agreed to between the Canadian Army and the Chinese Army. This includes peacekeeping-related training. At this time, GAC would not support postponing or canceling any peacekeeping training. Oh my gosh. Should the DND or the Canadian Army decide to delay or cancel initiatives due to newly identified risks, this should follow consultation with GAC and be paired with careful communication strategies to avoid becoming inadvertently linked to the current situation. Wow. Blatantly saying we got to pair this with propaganda. Lastly, with regards to events hosted in Canada by China. Did you hear that, guys? With regard to events hosted in Canada by China. Director level attendance and below is at the discretion of the invited department. Director general level and above should be consulted with GAC. The above guidance is consistent with the foreign policy guidance document relayed to DND by GAC in February 2018 titled Canada's Priorities for Security and Defense Engagement in Asia-Pacific, which was thoroughly consulted with DND, and requests that the Canadian Army consult GAC in advance of activities, and by extension, cessation of activities that could impact the Canadian-China bilateral relationship. Alright, we got one more, guys. Check this out. Unclassified, Annex 2, Canadian Armed Forces CAF, Chinese People Liberation Army, 2019 engagements. Engagement potentially paused. Chinese Army in Canada. Engagement. Chinese Army members participate in winter survival training at CFB Petawawa. Unbelievable, guys. Unbelievable. There you go. There you go. Proof from the Canadian government that Chinese Army is operating survival programs for the Chinese military out of base Petawawa. Unbelievable, you guys. Smoking gun. I hope you made it to the end of this article. Smoking gun. That's gonna have to be the thumbnail. Wow. I can't believe that, you guys. Let's read the end of this. It's probably gonna get crazier. Engagements not yet scheduled or confirmed. PLA in Canada. Military Education Commanders Dialogue. 1-star or 2-star level-led delegation. 2019. CAF PLA Defense Coordination Dialogue. 2-star level-led delegation. October or November 2019. So these are two dialogues where military leaders are going to come from China to Canada, basically to discuss tactics, officers' tactics, right? The Canadian military is training Chinese officers, which would make perfect sense because China's military is growing so quick, kind of like the Germans before World War II. They trained everybody to be officers before they even recruited the ground soldiers, right? Germany could only have a 100,000 person army in between the wars. So they made like 60,000 of those officers so that when they broke the Treaty of Versailles, they had the command structure in place and all they had to do was recruit and train for 6 weeks, your average foot soldier. Okay, look what Canada is doing in China. Engagement. Okay, DND, GAC, HADR. HADR is what we're living through right now. Disaster relief, hazard, whatever. So, a Canadian delegation is to visit Beijing for staff talks. It's a working level delegation in 2019 to be announced. Another one, DND Peacekeeping Delegation to visit Beijing and China's Peacekeeping Training Center for staff talks, 2019 as well. Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, or an RCN delegation to attend the PLAN Fleet Review in Qingdao. That's the People's Liberation Army Navy. That's a 3-star commander delegate going over there. A 3-star commander. So it says the Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, April 2019. DND Deputy DGIS poll to attend the 9th Beijing Xinjiang Forum, October 2019. We have more. Annex 2 Canadian Armed Forces, Chinese People's Liberation Army engagements. Okay, once again, the Chinese in Canada. Oh my gosh, look at, there's so much more, you guys. Chinese Army members attend the Canadian Security Studies program in Toronto. Chinese Army members instruct UN peacekeepers courses in Kingston, Canada. Chinese Army members attend UN courses in Canada. And then look at all these, more China, more Canadian Army in China. Canadian Army athletes attend the 7th Military World Games in Wuhan. Chinese Army to observe US, Australian, New Zealand, and Chinese maritime disaster relief exercise. Oh my gosh, guys. Canadian Armed Forces intelligence community analysts sent to China. 1 working level analyst, 2019. Look at all these guys. All these countries are working together, the United States included. Like, we literally have proof up here that the United States was doing, or still is doing, exercises with China all the time. Look at U.S. defense engagement with China has a long history of staff exchanges and joint military exercises, particularly in the area of disaster relief, which is what we're in right now. I think blue helmets will be on American soil, probably in 2021. This is outrageous. I will leave a link in the description. Remember to check it out on BitChute. It'll probably get pulled off YouTube. God bless you guys. Please share this, and hats off to Ezra Cohen at Rebel News in Canada.
soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force. You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.